Metroid Dread is the best 2D Metroid game in the whole franchise, and we're going to talk about that, but also why I still have concerns about this franchise's future.
Hey J Review.
Welcome back, Classy Crew, to another Hey J Review. Today we're going to be talking about Metroid Dread, and I'm going to get into some heavy spoilers, but don't worry, I'm going to put up a flag when we get into spoiler territory. So if you're just here because you're like, is Metroid Dread really worth picking up? What's it like hearing it from this guy? Let me just tell you, Metroid Dread is the best, in my opinion, in the Metroid franchise. It takes everything the previous 2D games have done and takes it up to another notch. It's a nice evolution of the franchise. It just keeps delivering and building on top of everything that made Metroid special. So if you're wondering, should I get this? I'm into Metroidvanias, or I've never been into the Metroid franchise before. The answer is yes. It's a good Metroidvania. Yes, it's a good Metroid game. Is it worth $60? We're going to talk about that more towards the end of the video. Ultimately, it's up to you how you decide to use your money. But for all intents of the game itself, it is a fantastic game to play. So what I love personally about Metroid Dread specifically is the movement. And this is something that the franchise has been slowly evolving towards with the later entries of the game, specifically the remake of Samus Returns. And it's something I praised in my last video. The movement in this game is so fast and fluid, it feels amazing. This is the kind of fluidity I like. It's a reason why I love Ori, the Ori game so much. It's because the character is just so fluid, and moving around, jumping over and sliding under things feels really good. But for everything that, there's a caveat when you do that. So traditionally, the Metroid games really worked up an atmosphere of kind of somber, mysterious, like you're usually exploring a planet where you don't know what's going on, and it's always what's around the corner. And this game does that as well. You still have the somber, you're on an unknown location and what's going to happen, but the speed of your character plays to the atmosphere a little bit differently. So if you look at the original games, which I remember clearly, like if you look at Super Metroid, that game had fantastic atmosphere, great music to it, and your character moved with a certain fluidity, but not the fluidity you see in Metroid Dread. And I think that slower pace movement really played to that atmosphere of just what's happening next, what's gonna jump out at me. In Metroid Dread, you lose that because you're running around so fast and you're just so fluid, but they combine that with the EMMI robots and the whole fact that you're being chased by these killer robots really lends itself well to the speed, because now it's all about outmaneuvering these things that are insanely fast, insanely scary, and they kill you in one hit as soon as you're there. So they pair up the speed with the dread, if you will, with the robots well, but the short side is that when you are just exploring the general parts of the planet, there's nothing too creepy about it because you're oftentimes just running around anyways. Now, I'm going to get into spoiler territory from this point on, because I'm going to talk about the story of the game, the bosses, the new abilities, all of the different robots. So if you don't want to have any of that spoiled, I leave it to you to decide what to do from this point on. So the story of the game, we are seeking out, we get another distress call. These robots kind of went offline. We go to the planet, and then we get our butts kicked by this Chozo, and then it's like, oh, we lost our power. We lost all of our powers. We gotta get off this planet, and story ensues. And so for the most part of the story is you're pretty much just getting your upgrades back so you can get back to your ship so that you can get out. But you know that inevitably you're going to be fighting the bird or the Chozo. What's his name again? Ravenbeak or something. Yeah, Ravenbeak. That's the name. I wrote it down. And I don't want to spoil the twist, even if you're casually watching this or whatever. I don't want to talk about the twist, because the twist, it's a nice twist, and I didn't see it coming, and that was great. For the rest of the story, I think it's really good story for the Metroid fans, because I feel like it really wraps up the arc of all the last Metroid games. But as someone, I will admit, I'm a lot more of a casual Metroid fan than a hardcore Metroid fan. And I know there's even more casual fans than me. Is it enough of a story to drive a casual fan to like Metroid more? Is it enough for even a casual fan like myself? I'm going to say the story wasn't that engrossing to me. I feel the Metroid Prime games, for example, there's more interesting story there. There wasn't but I don't play the Metroid games either for the story, so like I'm not going to dock it too many points for that. It was enough to keep me going. It was enough to kind of combine, like, because I know what happened in the other games, it was enough to link it all together. And there was room for more, yes, but there was enough to satisfy. And that's really the best way I can describe the story. Room for more, and hopefully we get more in that Metroid Prime 4 is where we're going to get more. But for this game, it's good. And I love the fact that they introduced a character called Quiet Robes. Like, fantastic name. Great character. I wish we could have seen more of him. And they didn't go the direction I thought they would have with him. I thought he would have played more of a role later on, if you know what happens midway. And that didn't happen. Now, when it comes to the bosses, I have to say all the bosses, I think I had a really good time fighting with them. I can't remember any that I'm like, oh, this is bullshit. I mean, I probably said bullshit, but I love the fact that they are all intimidating bosses. They all have multi-phases, and there's so much you need to learn from every boss fight that every boss fight challenges you of like, have you learned that last ability you got? Do you know how to use it? Do you know how to use it well? All the boss fights really do a great job of testing your use of the abilities. So the first one is, I think it's pronounced Corpius, which is like a big lizard with a tail. He goes invisible. The maneuvering around him, love that. You have to have like kind of that unique targeting of hitting the bulge in his ball. Bulge in his tail. Sorry. Really just fun fight of moving around, finding your positioning, and it just feels really satisfying when you take him down. I can't talk about bosses without also talking about the Arm of Consent, aka the melee attack. So this is something that was introduced in Samus Returns, the remake. And here they brought it back, and it feels nice. Like, it doesn't feel like it's front forward of like, hey, look at me, I'm a new ability, but it's smoothly integrated into everything that if you see it and you can like counter moves with it, you're rewarded with a great cutscene and a real great sense of empowerment. There are some parts where you have to use it to like trigger the end sequence of a boss fight, which that I was like, this feels a bit like an old, quick time event thing. I'm like, wasn't a big fan of it, but the visuals were always cool. It always made Samus look like a badass. So I'm like, okay, I guess I can trade off the cheesiness of like the feel of a quick time event for the awesomeness of just watching Samus dish out a boss with a final move. Corpius is great. Then we got Kraid, which is fantastic to kind of just get a nostalgic boss back in there. And again, multi-phase was great. I way preferred this version of him than the past versions that I fought him in. The belly button was completely disgusting. That is something I do not need an HD visual of, just his belly button like full of pus and just like stuff coming out of it, and you're just like shooting it in there. It was gross. It was gross to look, but a fun boss fight. Then we got the robot Chozo, which destroyed me so much because I didn't understand how to shift properly, and I was trying to shift through him instead of jumping and shifting. And even the jump shift I didn't realize was just jump and a button. I thought it was like you had to charge, jump, and use like a weird button combination. So that fight, I had to learn how to read the opponent to like dash through him to dodge his like super move. And that took me a lot of attempts. But once I learned how to dodge better, that is like a key move you need to progress in bosses in that game. Like dashing is so important. Then we got Drogiga. This was like an underwater boss with tentacles and stuff. Really threw me off at first, but once like I realized how everything works, super fun boss again. Aim for the weak point. You get to maneuver up top. You get to use like a little bit of the level against it. Dodging the tentacles, like just a nice, comfortable fight that once you see how to do it and you pull it off, you're like, I'm smart. Like you get that sense of reward, which I like. Then we had a Chozo Soldier, which this is kind of an introductory of how to fight them because you fight multiple after. And once you learn how to fight that, it becomes such a comfortable fight. It's just all about positioning, and it feels good. Like, it feels good to outmaneuver these things that at first are so intimidating, and then you just learn how to deal with them. And then when they deal them out more frequently after, and you're just dishing them out left and right, really feels like you are leveling up as a player. Experiment Z57, which is the undead monster. This one was really cool too because it's positioning on a whole other level. Like, you have to learn how to move quick, how to react quick to all of its different phases, and the positioning is just so key. Like, this was again testing me of like, do I know how to move fast enough? And it was just a fun fight. Like, this is a recurring theme. All the bosses I really liked. Golzuna was the next one. I'm trying to remember what Golzuna was. Oh, I loved how they introduced this. So this is a parasite X boss that you kind of fall into a room and don't realize it's a boss right away. And then it's like, all right, dish out the big guy. And then he transforms into a bigger guy. And you're like, all right, dish out this guy. And then he transforms like into the actual boss where you have to fight him like as this big like tank. And it's all, again, about positioning, about like sliding between the legs, shooting him in the back. Like that makes such good use of Samus's new moveset. It just felt really good to dodge by like sliding under the monster, shooting it in the back, and then like just jumping around in the air, dodging everything, keep punishing it when the openings were happening. Again, fantastic fight. And then we have the final fight of the game, which you all should know what it is if you're watching this. That too was a great fight that just took all of your abilities, put it together. Very challenging. Every phase makes it even harder and harder. And it's so fast paced. Like I don't think we've ever gone a Metroid game where you need to be so quick in your maneuvers to dodge everything. Like it's just, the game asks you to be fast, to react quickly, and to be on top of your game. And if you don't move fast, that boss is going to like just destroy you. So I really love the fact that it was based on quick reflexes and speed. But on the other hand, I'm like, ooh, this is probably very difficult for players that play games a little bit more casually. That demand from the player is actually quite high, I think, and might make this game a little bit less accessible in some groups. So overall, bosses were fantastic. The one thing before I get further, I didn't really talk about the visuals and the audio because you can see them from the trailers. The visuals are fantastic. I couldn't ask for anything better. The audio I think could have been better. I don't recall any tracks in this game which were iconic, and it's there, it's good, but it's not great. Like I feel there's so many iconic themes in the Metroid franchise. This one could have created a new one or remixed an old one at like key moments in the story, and that didn't happen, which made this game feel like a little bit of a standalone in the franchise. Like the big thing that's keeping it together is of course that overarching story that brings it all together. But I wish that we had a little bit more iconic music in the game, and even some like really cool tracks that I just want to listen to over and over again after completing the game. Now, if we get into, well, I guess we should talk about the EMMIs. The EMMIs were like this big built-up thing since the game was revealed. I was kind of disappointed to find out our little white EMMI here gets dispatched so early on in the game, and then you're dealing with all these other multicultural EMMIs. My God, all these other different colored EMMIs, which just get more intense. And it was a bit of a cop-out, I feel, what they did with the final one. So the base one is great because it teaches you how to dispatch it. Then they give you this one, which is kind of a nice, comfortable fight to like show you that, oh, these things are quick. You got to run, you got to hustle. And this is how you now you got to take what you learned from the first fight and apply it to a live one. And then it just keeps like raising the bar of like, oh, this one can detect you when it sees you. Oh, this one can detect you anywhere you are on the screen. Oh, this one can freeze you. And it just gets harder and harder, where the purple one is just ridiculous. And I forget if it was the green or the yellow. I think it was the yellow. One is just super fast. Like you literally can't outrun it. So it just keeps taking away more and more of your comfort zone every time you get one, which is great because the game levels up with you. But man, those things are terrifying. And the fact that you can't instantly cancel out the lock and the instant kill, that's like nightmare fuel. So the last one, the red one, I was expecting it to be like this ridiculous one. And it's almost like Nintendo wrote themselves in a corner and they're like, how do we make an EMMI that is harder than the purple one? And the answer was, oh, we can't. Destroy. And I'm just like, come on. You could have done some intense stuff there. There was room to make it even more difficult. So a little bit disappointed with how the last one was after that whole buildup of like, oh, these EMMIs are getting more and more intense. I think they could have done more with the EMMIs. And yeah, they could have done more. In terms of finally the abilities, the new ones specifically, the spider magnet, I love that ability. I love that I can like now shoot and pull myself to walls. That is something I never thought I needed in a Metroid game. Love that. I hope we see that in Metroid Prime 4 because it would work really well, I think, especially with all of the new like first person shooters that have all these like grapple hooks and it's all about like propelling yourself, like Halo and Apex Legends. Like that mechanic is kind of the flavor of the decade, so Metroid Prime 4 better include it. The Phantom Cloak was all right. I didn't use it too much. The Cross Bombs was a really cool evolution of just the Morph Balls power up. honestly, I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. Why didn't we see this before? Crossbomb, perfect evolution of that power up. Flash shift is really perfect for the Metroid Dread flavoring of like everything needs to move fast. And that one, once you master it, it takes Metroid to a whole other level. And then the Storm Missile, oh man, what a game changer that is. So the fact that I can lock onto 5 enemies or 5 weak points on one enemy and just like spam and barrage missiles, fantastic. It does make things a little bit easier. So it's a little bit of a trade-off where, yes, the game gets harder, but then it gives you these weapons to make it a little bit easier. I love it. I love the Storm Missile, and I just spam that like crazy at the end. And the more that you find and collect in the game, the more that Storm Missile rewards you, because then you can use it more often, which is fantastic. So overall, I love this game. I think this is the best one in the whole franchise. And I'm just going to end with a cautionary tale. So I've been very vocal on my socials about my concerns about the Metroid franchise selling well. We're at a point about a month after launch where we've gotten our first glimpse of sales for the first month, which puts Metroid Dread at about 1 to 1.5 million global sales, roughly, about under 1 million in the US. And this is like the best-selling Metroid game ever, I think, for the first month. So it's doing really well at launch. And my concerns were never about launch. We all knew that there was a lot of hype, that the Metroid community had grown more than ever. People wanted a new Metroid game. And those numbers reflect that, because those people that wanted the Metroid game picked it up and like they got into it and they wanted it, and they showed up in the strong support with a strong platform like the Switch. You don't have audiences divided between a handheld and a console anymore, like in the days of 3DS and Wii U. It's all on one platform now, and there was a lot of want for a Metroid game, and they showed up. So first month sales makes sense, great. And I think we're going to see some good numbers up until the holidays, because this is kind of Nintendo's holiday title. Where I'm concerned is, despite what the game has offered and everything I've seen from the game, it's a good game, but it still lives next to these Metroidvanias, which are just as good, honestly. And in some cases, they're better in their own rights. And the value proposition that Nintendo's putting forward is you have to pay a premium because it's a Nintendo IP, and therefore it's worth more. I'm talking about the full $60 price point. And I think for a Metroid fan, and even for a hardcore Metroidvania fan, or for someone who doesn't need to budget their games, it's a non-issue. They're going to drop that money. I dropped that money. I bought the game twice even. I got the special edition and the normal one. But for anyone who might be looking at the Metroid franchise, looking to get in, it's a harder sell for them, I think. And you know, the whole experience is it's under 10 hours, which is kind of typical for a Metroidvania. And the whole aspect of the replayability of Metroid Dread is going through it and either trying to beat it faster and with less collectibles. And as you know, that to me as a player is unappealing. I'm all about completing and getting my percentage bar high, but this game is asking you to keep your percentage low and beat it fast, and that's just not appealing to me. So I just feel for the package that it's offering, for the fact that you know, it's not the strongest story, it's a great game when you compare it to its franchise, and it's a great game amongst all the other Metroidvanias, but it's not amazing and superb in a way that like I need to drop some big cash on this. And so I think the price is really the thing that is the most controversial of keeping people away. That if you didn't love Metroid and you paid $60, if you're not into the Metroid community, you pay $60 to get into this, would you be satisfied after you played the game? I don't think so. I think you'd be like, that's a good game, but I would have paid 40 or 50 for it. So I think it's a little overpriced for the climate that Metroidvanias are in these days. And I feel that the game does not offer enough to warrant that. Now, I could be completely wrong, and it doesn't even matter if I'm right or wrong. I think this is a success in Nintendo's eyes. They're already seeing really good numbers for the Metroid franchise, and I think that at the end of the day is what matters. And it doesn't really matter if it sells, like it's already proven itself. So honestly, it doesn't even matter if the franchise doesn't pick up more than what I would like to see it. Like I would love to see this in the 5 to 10 million numbers. It's probably not going to do that, and that's okay because it's still showing that there is a strong desire for this franchise. I think it's going to only push Metroid Prime 4 further, and hopefully with a combination of this game and Metroid Prime 4 selling well, it's only going to mean a good future for the franchise. So all in all, we're in a good place. I did have some concerns when I revisited the Metroid franchise before launch. I had concerns all the way through. I think my concerns are still very much founded, but hey, we've already seen some initial results and Nintendo's happy. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. And fans are happy. Metroid fans are happy. That's what matters too. So we've got a fantastic Metroid game here to play for years to come. So that's it for my review. I'll see you in the next Hey J review, whatever it may be. And until next time, keep it classy. Do, 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 do. Subscribe.